And he says, if you dare to say anything about this, this is between you and I. This is family stuff. You don't share it with anybody. And if you dare to say anything, you will get it later.
He started to kick me, he threw me to the ground, and I didn't know how to protect myself. I just curled up. I thought, this is where I die, right here.
And every single night he sat in front of us and he cleaned that .357 Magnum and he warned us, anybody ever tried to take his children from him, they were gonna die.
I was told the only way out of my marriage was in a pine box.
If you abuse a woman, we will do whatever we can to send you to jail, to prison, or whatever else it takes to protect society from further violence.
No one thinks the person they love will abuse them, but for 1 out of every 4 women in the U.S., their spirits, trust, and bodies are broken by their loved ones.
When violence does occur, the criminal justice system is there to arrest and prosecute offenders in order to hold them accountable and keep victims safe. Unfortunately, there are times the system breaks down.
And I even had the recorded call that night of him threatening to kill me. And they're like, well, we have to run it through processing and do all of these other things. And I was like, how is that going to protect me tonight?
That's why the Maricopa Association of Governments is working closely with law enforcement and prosecutors to determine how to fix an imperfect system.
The MAG Protocol Evaluation Project, with support from the Governor's Office, is changing the way that we respond to domestic violence. We're working together to put abusers behind bars and to give victims the help that they need. We're working to make changes to make a difference.
For some, this work might come too late. Each year in Arizona, more than 100 people lose their lives at the hands of their loved ones.
Nationwide, half of the women who are murdered in the United States are killed by their husband or boyfriend.
Domestic violence is a pattern of manipulative behaviors. Abusers use fear to control their victims.
In addition to physical abuse, there are quite a few other forms that are probably more damaging or just as damaging. The bruises can heal, but when you have verbal abuse, it goes right to the core of someone. Psychological abuse, demeaning them for years, cuts their self-esteem down tremendously, to the point where they think that they're nothing, absolutely nothing.
I remember feeling at the time that I was worthless, that he would tell me I'm so stupid.
Often what people associate as being domestic violence is the hit, the slap, the push. That is really a very small amount of what domestic violence is. It's the name calling, it's the intimidating, it's the control, it's the threats.
Domestic violence affects everyone.
Domestic violence occurs in every class, in every race, in every culture.
We tend to believe that it's only the minority and people that low income. Domestic violence, because we have to remember, it's about control. It's about the power, who has the power, and who has the control.
It's happening in every community across our nation.
Many of these people are your friends and neighbors, whether you realize it or not. The person next door, your sister, your cousin, they may be the victims of domestic violence.
In the beginning, what I was attracted to was his personality. He was very charismatic, outgoing, happy, made everybody laugh. The center of attention, a lot of fun.
Unfortunately for Alexis, things were about to change dramatically.
One night, it was like he just snapped. Like his friends even tried to warn me, like, he has another side to him. he would call me and be like, I will find you. I remember just shaking, like that I would never have a normal life as long as he was in it.
One man remembers his descent into abusing the family he loved.
I met my wife 18 years ago. She's funny, she's a good person, she's a great mother, a great wife. It's the greatest feeling in the world, you know, to see your child being born, you know, and just knowing that, you know, that they're yours. My kids are my life, they're my breath, you know, they're my air, they're everything to me. My kids and including my wife. Without them, I'm nothing.
In the beginning, Josh had it all. A great wife, 3 loving children, and a good job. No one saw the pain that had been building in Josh ever since he was a child.
My dad left when I was 3, died when I was 9, and that's actually when I started drinking, right after my dad died.
Things were beginning to unravel, and Josh was about to reach his boiling point.
Well, there was just a lot of stress, you know, had to do with work. I ended up losing my house, I ended up losing my car.
Over time, tensions with the family continued to grow.
I started drinking every day a lot, and it just led up to that night, you know. I just ended up exploding that night, you know, and it was all about control and try to scare them, you know, to let them know that I was in charge.
Alexis's abuser was also about control.
It was like he took the darkest part of me and you know, opened it up, and I didn't know how to flush that out of my system and see life as beautiful again.
Like thousands of other women who find themselves in an abusive situation, it was a reality Alexis had not imagined.
Of course, nobody ever thinks that that's where they're going to end up, and yet, you know, there you are, and it has changed the person that you are.
Alexis changed from a confident young woman to someone controlled by constant fear.
I had nightmares where I'd wake up every night covered in sweat, like you could literally wring my clothes out.
The verbal abuse, intimidation, and control got worse. Alexis was afraid not only for herself, but even more so for her 3 daughters.
The fear that my kids could get hurt or caught in the crossfire, or, you know, that they were already seeing all the verbal abuse, that eventually that was going to take a toll on who they are.
Her abuser became extremely jealous and possessive.
I was pregnant with my daughter, and he was like obsessing, accusing me of cheating on him when I was pregnant, and just like really sick things. He'd come home and, you know, tell me he's gonna kill me, and, you know, I don't deserve to live, and if I leave, he'll hunt me down and find me. And then I'd lock myself in the bathroom because I was afraid, and he'd be like, baby, I love you, I just don't know why you won't let me love you.
Some wonder why women like Alexis don't leave.
Their abuser has put them just where they want them without any self-worth. They lose all of their friends, they lose all of their family, you know, they become isolated, and they don't think they have a way out. You know, that this is their life, and then they're so beaten down and so broken that they don't have the strength to get out of it.
Her boyfriend's treatment of her continued to get worse.
I can't do this anymore. I cannot live like this. I just want my life back.
Still, Alexis, like many other women, struggled with the decision to leave.
It's a cycle, and you become a part of that cycle because that's where that abuser wants you to be. And there's no way to break free from that and to get yourself back without walking away and getting safe.
Finally, Alexis was able to break the cycle and leave the man who had controlled her life. But he wasn't ready to let go of her. He called her home one night and told her he was coming over. She locked the windows and doors and called police. Alexis had forgotten to lock one of the windows. All of a sudden, there he was.
I was so scared. He had a hold of my hair, and I just remember running like I didn't care. Like I had to get away from him because I knew how strong he was. I was being held down by my hair and stabbed. And I just thought I was being hit. I didn't know I was being stabbed. And I woke up and I was like, I can't believe you're doing this.
Alexis's brother and a friend were also attacked.
He had stabbed my friend 8 times. He stabbed my brother in the back of the head. He stabbed me twice. I remember just being paralyzed because, you know, my brother's yelling, call 911, call 911.
Perhaps most surprising, the weapon being used was a common ink pen, but it was wielded with such deadly rage, the damage was devastating.
There was blood everywhere, you know, and I mean just everywhere, like my entire house was covered in blood.
Police responded quickly. The man was arrested, and Alexis and the others were taken to the emergency room.
I love you.
Today, Alexis and her daughters are safe and happy. Her abuser was sentenced to 10 years in prison.
Are you ready for bed? Yeah. Okay. Let's say our prayers. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul.
Alexis and her daughters are thankful for what they have now, but emotional scars remain.
In the morning light. Amen. I love you. Baby. Sweet dreams, baby.
You too. Does Spider-Man get tired?
Alexis is not alone. Janet and her son Rayad are just enjoying the day. Yet some images are slow to fade from memory.
There was a time when I had my baby boy and he was in his crib, and what had happened was I was trying to tell his father to leave and he wouldn't leave. I kept telling him, can you please leave? I don't want you to be here. He came over to me and he started to strangle me in front of my son, and my son was standing there screaming his voice out. And my son was only, I think, not even 1. And his father was strangling me, and I remember thinking like, okay, this is how I'm gonna die.
She was terrified for her life, but also for her son's.
And if I continued to be in this situation or in this relationship, he was going to grow up to possibly be like his father. And so I decided from that moment to just leave him. I would relive and rethink about all of those times that he did this to me and my son, and I would really have to think about, is that something that I wanted? Is this something that I wanted for me and my son to experience every single day for the rest of our lives?
Janet found the courage and assistance she needed to escape.
Total power and control, right?
Today, she works for the Arizona Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Unfortunately, 3 out of 5 Native American women suffer domestic violence at some point in their lives.
Some of the progress that Native nations have made in addressing domestic violence have been either updating or changing their laws pertaining to domestic violence and how they hold abusers accountable.
Tribal governments recently received help in these efforts when Congress passed the Tribal Law and Order Act of 2010. The act will allow U.S. attorneys to prosecute reservation crimes in federal courts. Just one more tool Native Americans will have in making communities safer.
And some other ways that they have addressed domestic violence in their communities have been working with specific agencies to create or maintain their domestic violence services, victim services. Some have gone as far as to creating actual shelters on their reservations.
Violence not only costs victims in all walks of life, it costs us as a society.
In addition to the enormous personal cost, there's a business case to be made as well. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, we spend $8.3 billion on healthcare services, mental health services, and lost productivity as a result of domestic violence.
Women in domestic violence relationships are 6 times more likely to go to the emergency room than other women who are not. They're also 8 times more likely to go to the doctor and 6 times more likely to use prescription medication. All of this affects our local economy and the healthcare costs that we all pay.
Some other impacts that domestic violence have on society as a whole are the costs of investigating these cases, police response, prosecutor response, court response. There's a huge cost to society.
When an incident moves from the crime scene to the courtroom, we also incur additional costs because a majority of the misdemeanor domestic violence cases are dismissed at the early stages. That imposes not just criminal justice costs, but tremendous strain on victims. According to a MAG study, we spend between $18 and $26 million every year on justice system costs alone.
And while we pay now, our children will pay for years to come.
Kids are shattered when there's a domestic violence in the home. And you just kind of wonder what the long-term effects are going to be. What about their relationships? How are they going to handle the hurt? Is there going to be substance abuse? Will they have learned a pattern so that they become an abuser or willing to be abused?
More than half of women experiencing abuse live with children younger than 12 years old.
And every year, more than 12,000 children in this region witness violence in their home.
I pointed the gun at my wife and my kids. I pointed it at my wife and my daughter. I pointed it at my daughter's head, which was one of the biggest mistakes of my life. And I told them that if they didn't move out of my way, that I was going to shoot them.
His kids were not only terrified, but confused.
Probably one of the worst things a child can think of, or experience. Have their own father, their parent that they look up to, put a gun to their head and tell them that he's going to kill them.
Josh's teenage son tried to protect his sisters and mother.
I mean, after I did it, it's like, what kind of example am I setting? If my son's got to protect them from their father.
Probably most importantly, it impacts any children in the home. Children who grow up in a domestic violence household are much more likely to be victims themselves and to be violent themselves.
He was pretty mean. It got to the physical part where he used his cowboy boots to beat me with them. Broken jaw, broken ribs.
For Raquel, the pain went beyond the physical beatings.
Mind you, I had to clean the boots, keep them shiny for him, because was his apparel. That was what I had to do. It's a weapon. It was a weapon that he used, that he belittled me as to a level of ownership, like, I own you, but you need to keep them clean because they make me look good.
The first time Raquel left, he found her.
He broke the kitchen window. He knew that I was staying by myself with my newborn baby, and he went in there and raped me.
Raquel vowed she would escape with her children.
Seeing the effect on my children, seeing my child cry, and a 4-year-old being in a corner after he had beat me up, being in a corner and sobbing in big tears, and then running to me and holding me, trembling, that was a turning point for me. I could not do that to my kids. I could not do that.
Something had to change.
If I stay, he will kill me. He will definitely kill me then. I called the operator and I said, I have no money, I have my 3 kids, and I don't know where to go.
Women stay because they don't have any other options. Oftentimes the abuser has spent a great deal of time isolating them from their friends and their family. They may not have jobs. They may not have any money of their own. They're dependent on their abuser for food, for support for their children, for paying the bills, for a place to live.
Unfortunately, police officers are not always equipped to handle complex domestic violence situations. Raquel remembers her husband laughingly warning her police wouldn't believe her story. He was right. She vividly remembers what he told police.
I just had to slap her to bring her back to her senses, because she was saying crazy stuff. The police looked at him and he goes, well, did you slap her so hard that she's bleeding? She's very sensitive. Any little scratch, she bleeds a lot. I don't know, there's something wrong with her, physically, that she bleeds with everything. And I kept staring at the police and staring at him. I couldn't say anything. He goes, well, keep it quiet. The neighbors called and left.
Law enforcement agencies are working to increase awareness about domestic violence so that officers can be more sensitive to the needs of victims.
We're training our officers to look beyond the blood and the bruises, to look for those emotional scars, to look for what's happening behind the scenes that's really causing domestic violence to be so prevalent in our community.
And it isn't just law enforcement that recognized the need for change.
Before, it was just something that was brushed under the rug. It was like a bad family secret that nobody would talk about. And I think now that we're very more present, and this is a real dangerous crime that touches thousands of lives.
The reason that domestic violence is still a problem in our society is because we still allow it to be a problem in our society.
It was the recognition that the system was failing victims that led to the creation of the MAG Regional Domestic Violence Council in the year 2000. The goal? To bring all of the various agencies together to better coordinate regional efforts.
The MAG Regional Domestic Violence Council works closely with police, prosecutors, victim advocates, and others to ensure the safety of domestic violence victims.
The Council represents one of the largest coordinated community response coalitions of its kind in the country. It has undertaken projects ranging from addressing workplace violence to training healthcare providers to recognize the symptoms of abuse.
By addressing the issue of domestic violence regionally, we can more effectively and efficiently respond, saving time, money, resources, and most importantly, lives.
Now, with the support of the Governor's Office, the Council is undertaking a new project to evaluate the way people are arrested and prosecuted for domestic violence crimes.
We're analyzing the way that we arrest and prosecute domestic violence offenders in this region, and we're finding that our system is fragmented. We're working very closely with law enforcement, prosecutors, and victim advocates to build a more effective and a more coordinated approach. We're making improvements based on national best practices that respond to our local priorities.
It's critical that we find a way to work together to more efficiently respond to these types of calls. It's also critical that we effectively deal with the issue of prosecution, holding offenders accountable, and making victims feel safe. The Phoenix Police Department responds to well over 100 calls every day on domestic violence.
Phoenix 911, where is your emergency?
Having 2 officers respond to domestic violence calls is one example of a best practice that protects the officers as well as the victims.
One of the most life-threatening and dangerous calls an officer responds on is domestic violence. Upon arrival, many times the scene is very chaotic. It's emotionally charged. Officers need to quickly assess the situation, determine if an arrest needs to be made, and hopefully help victims feel safe and empowered in the process.
The new model also includes a focus on victims' rights, rights that have existed for a long time in writing, but are not always applied in practice.
It's bad enough when a life is shattered by domestic violence, when loved ones are murdered, when families are broken apart, but when the system itself that was supposed to pursue justice for you in the wake of those awful crimes also treats you with indifference and sometimes neglect and real unfairness, that's a double injury that no one should have to endure.
Making sure victims receive help when they need it most, at the crime scene, is another key strategy in addressing domestic violence.
Really, the whole goal is to help you all feel more confident. So when you're out there responding to these types of calls,
these volunteers are being trained in how they can help first responders on the scene. Eventually, these volunteers will find themselves assigned to a crisis response team like this one, led by Kristen Charlo and Martha Falbo. Tempe's Care 7 team partners with police and fire agencies to provide on-scene emotional support for victims.
In essence, we do mobile social work.
When the team arrives at this apartment complex, the suspect has already left, and the woman is extremely upset. Kristen and Martha's job is to listen and to provide information, options, and hope.
So the police, they made me feel really safe when they were there, but they can't stay with me. So the crisis response team is always available 24/7 to sit with me and talk with me on the phone, whatever I need.
What they're going through it may be horrible, it may be the worst day of their lives, but there are people that care about them. and that there are people that are going to help them get through their situation, and that's what we're there for.
Care 7 has been there to answer every question that I had about the trial process, anything to do with prosecution, and really be there for me every time I needed to go to trial, and it's like they're a friend to me when I need a friend.
Services that victims receive in the days and months following a crime can give the victim the support they need to participate in a trial.
For victims who have the courage to cooperate with prosecution, there's a 90% chance that their offender will be held accountable and not do this to them again.
Assistance that Alexis received from her court-appointed victim advocate and others gave her the strength to get through her abuser's trial.
I went to counseling. It took me a year after, he had attacked me and my family. I remember waking up one day and it was just gone. The fear was gone. I was happy. I could smile. I could look at my kids and just watch them play.
Ring around the rosies, pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Children learn by example.
Raquel found strength by using her experience to help others as an advocate for Sojourner Center.
I have to validate their pain, definitely, their fear, because it's real. The fact that, that there is hope out there, and when she does decide, there is help out there, and there is a possibility of them making it. And when they are ready, we are here. We are here.
Demeaning someone and belittling someone over a period of time.
Programs are important for offenders as well as victims. After Josh got out of jail, he was forbidden from having any contact with his family.
I just thought about my family. I thought about my kids and my wife, and if either I stop or I'm going to lose them.
Josh embraced the program. He came in, he was motivated to change and willing to learn because he wanted to get back to his family.
I've learned how to control myself here. I learned how to tell myself it ain't worth it, If you're gonna argue or something, walk away, take a time out,
The victim will...
Mary hopes that the men in this offender treatment program embrace the program as much as Josh did.
To me, the most gratifying part is when they will call each other out or confront each other. Accountability is one of our main goals.
Upon graduating from the male offender program, Josh was reunited with his family.
Very emotional. Real emotional. Me and my wife couldn't stop crying. And, just seeing the smile on my kids, my 5-year-old just running to my arms, just great,
It is going to take all of us to really make the effort to say that violence against women is unacceptable, that it is a form of oppression that we will not accept in our community, in our society.
Alexis, Janet, Raquel,
Everybody deserves to be safe.
Josh.
You don't have to feel so trapped.
All were on the brink of despair. All found help. If you want to end domestic violence in your life or help someone you know, you can find safety tips on the MAG website. One recommendation: have a safety plan in place. Keep identification, money, legal papers, and other important items in a safe place, perhaps with a friend. If you have children, plan an escape route in advance and have a code word that lets them know when to call 911. You can also call the National Domestic Violence Hotline 24 hours a day. Change is possible. There is hope.
I want to be the good husband that I'm supposed to be, the good father that I'm supposed to be. I opened my eyes, and I'm back and I'm here to stay.
I think when you're a survivor, it's when you have gotten out and you can look back and know that that doesn't define who you are.
Look at the bird. Ready, set, go.
So pretty.
I want to raise my daughters to where they know what a loving, trusting relationship is. And I want them to grow up and be able to love somebody that isn't going to harm them.
Oh.